The sound of a slap cracked through the marble-floored lobby of Monarch Financial Bank, sharp, unflinching, a sound that froze the air. "I've already called the police." "We don't serve your kind here," Preston Reed barked, his voice bouncing off high ceilings, carrying authority like a weapon. He wanted everyone to hear it, to know who was in charge. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. A pen rolled off a desk and hit the floor with a lonely click. Zora Timberlake did not flinch. She stood perfectly still, her cheek burning from the impact, her dark eyes fixed on the man who had struck her. Preston Reed, customer service manager. His gold nameplate gleamed beneath the harsh fluorescent lights as though proud of him. Two security guards rushed over, not to restrain Preston, but to surround Zora. "You're under arrest, ma'am," one said, his voice clipped, rehearsed as if dignity were a privilege, not a right. Phones came out. Screens glowed. Fingers swiped to record. Another viral moment of American discrimination in the making. Some customers shifted uneasily, their discomfort visible. Others watched with idle curiosity. Most simply stood there. Instead of anger, instead of humiliation, Zora inhaled slowly. She adjusted the simple cardigan draped over her plain blouse. When she spoke, her voice was low but carried, the kind of calm that comes from a lifetime of knowing exactly who you are. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," she said, each word measured, deliberate, the weight of her restraint heavier than the sting on her cheek. At 45, Zora Timberlake was the embodiment of self-made power. Daughter of a hospital janitor and a public school teacher, she had clawed her way through college working 3 jobs, earned her MBA while raising her son alone after her husband's sudden death, and built Timberlake Financial from a cramped one-room office into a banking empire managing over $9 billion in assets. Her face had graced Forbes and Black Enterprise. Her name adorned donor walls at hospitals, universities, and community centers. Her signature authorized transactions that changed lives. But none of that mattered here. Today there was no tailored suit, no diamonds, no camera flashes. She wore off-the-rack clothes, her immaculate braids tucked under a modest headscarf. Contact lenses replaced her trademark glasses. She looked like any middle-class black woman handling personal business at a bank, which was precisely the point. What Preston Reed didn't know was this. 3 weeks earlier, Zora had quietly purchased Monarch Financial in a deal so discreet that even most employees didn't know. Only the board and top executives were aware. The public announcement wasn't due until next month, after she'd finished her own investigation. Because for Zora, this branch wasn't just another acquisition. It was personal. 30 years ago, her grandmother, Eloise Jenkins, had walked through these same glass doors to apply for a modest home loan. Eloise had perfect credit, solid income, and every qualification. She was turned away anyway. The excuse was vague, but the truth was sharp. Certain neighborhoods, they'd said, had different requirements. That denial had altered her grandmother's life. It kept her in rental housing that drained resources she could have invested, wealth she could have passed down. Zora had told her executives exactly why she was going undercover. Some things don't show up in audits. Discrimination doesn't appear on balance sheets. Bias won't be in a quarterly report. The only way to understand a customer's experience is to become one. Her team had protested. It was risky. What if she was recognized? What if something went wrong? Wouldn't a mystery shopper be safer? "No," she had said, her tone like steel wrapped in velvet. "You can't fix what you don't understand. I need to feel it. See it with my own eyes, in my own skin." At home, in the quiet hum of her modernist kitchen overlooking the city lights, her 16-year-old son Jamal had challenged her over dinner. "You own the bank now, Mom. Why not just fire everybody and start fresh? Why put yourself through this?" Zora had set her fork down, studying him. Because firing without understanding solves nothing. Those same people get hired somewhere else, and keep doing the same harm. "I want to break the pattern, not pass it along." She didn't yet know just how deep the pattern ran. Behaviors don't change unless the system changes, Zora had told Jamal the night before, her tone steady, almost reflective. "So you're just going to let them disrespect you, after everything you've built?" His voice carried the pure indignation of youth, that impatient belief that power should be wielded like a hammer, right now, without hesitation. Zora smiled faintly, a sadness flickering behind her eyes. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the most powerful thing you can do is be underestimated." It was a lesson her great-grandmother had whispered across kitchen tables decades earlier, a truth forged in an era when the wrong look could cost you your job, your home, your life. "She couldn't fight the system from the outside," Zora continued, "but I can dismantle it from the inside." That was the part Jamal couldn't quite grasp, the double consciousness she'd lived with her entire life. To be both a banking mogul whose name could move markets, and a black woman in America, forever aware of the lens through which she was seen. Monarch Financial wasn't just an investment. It was a reckoning. Founded in 1952, the bank had grown rich financing white families' dreams while quietly, methodically denying qualified black applicants the same chance. The marble columns out front weren't just architecture, they were monuments to exclusion. Zora's first undercover visit was precise, intentional. Tuesday morning mid-traffic. Enough customers to observe patterns, but not so many that the staff could hide behind chaos. She stepped through the doors at 10:17 a.m. into a lobby that smelled faintly of polished brass and old money. Mahogany counters gleamed. Potted ferns stood like silent sentinels. The artwork on the walls spoke of stability, but only for those who had already arrived. Her disguise was meticulous. Navy slacks, white blouse, a cardigan that had seen better days. Sensible shoes. A worn leather purse containing her carefully crafted alter ego, Zora Jenkins, complete with driver's license, bank statements, and credit history strong enough to qualify for any service offered. The kind of profile that should have been met with a handshake, not suspicion. For customers were ahead of her. She watched the first, a white businessman in his 50s, get escorted instantly to a private desk. The second, an elderly white couple, received warm smiles and patient explanations about retirement accounts. The third, a young man in jeans, walked away with a stack of brochures and a business card from a personal banker. When it was Zora's turn, she approached with the same polite confidence she used in boardrooms. The teller, Aiden, couldn't have been more than 24. His shirt crisp, his tie perfectly knotted, his eyes uncertain. That flicker, quick, almost invisible, was her first confirmation. "I'm new to the area," Zora said evenly. "I'd like to open a primary checking and savings account, and I'm also interested in your investment services." She slid her identification across the counter. Aiden glanced at it, then reached for a trifold brochure. "You can find all our account information online," he murmured, lowering his voice. "Or if you'd like, the ATM can set up a basic account for you without the wait." It was wrapped as convenience, but it was dismissal. A quiet nudge toward the machine instead of the banker's chair. "I'd prefer to speak with someone," Zora replied pleasantly, though her voice left no room for doubt. "I have questions about your investment services as well." Aiden's jaw tightened. "I'll see if anyone's available." The phone call was short, laced with coded phrases. "I have a walk-in requesting account services." "Yes, she's asking for a banker." "I understand, okay." He hung up, forcing a polite smile. "All our personal bankers are with clients. It might be a significant wait. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer to use our online services? They're very user-friendly." Before she could respond, the front doors opened. A white woman in her 30s stepped in, cardigan, slacks, nothing fancy. Preston Reed, from his perch at the customer service desk, was on his feet in seconds. His smile was wide, his handshake eager. "Good morning. Welcome to Monarch Financial. Let's get you taken care of." Zora watched. She didn't speak. She didn't need to, the contrast spoke loudly enough. "Welcome to Monarch Financial. Are you looking to open an account with us today?" Preston's voice carried across the lobby, warm and practiced, the sort of tone meant to make a customer feel like the center of the universe. But it wasn't for Zora. It was for the white woman who had just walked through the door. He moved toward her with an outstretched hand and a smile so bright it could have lit the marble floor. "I'd be happy to help you personally. We take pride in providing a human touch here." Zora didn't flinch, didn't frown, didn't even clear her throat. She simply watched, her mind filing away every detail like an attorney gathering evidence for trial. Two women. Same age range. Same dress code. Same request. The only difference was skin. "I understand there might be a wait," Zora told Aiden, her voice as smooth as still water. "I'm happy to schedule an appointment if that would be easier." She didn't have to wait long for Preston to finish with his other client. When he approached, his smile was courteous but his eyes told another story, a quick visual appraisal, the kind that could weigh and dismiss you in under 3 seconds. "I understand you're interested in our services," he said, his tone dipped in false warmth. "For new clients, we typically recommend starting with our online portal to expedite things. Our staff is quite busy with existing account holders." Zora heard the unspoken message, "You're not our kind of customer." "I prefer in-person banking," she replied, still smiling, still unshaken. "I'm willing to wait or schedule a time to return." Preston's smile thinned. Without an existing relationship, we require additional identification and proof of address. Zora slid her driver's license, social security card, and utility bill across the counter. It was more than enough, but Preston held the license up to the light as though it were counterfeit. "I see you're self-employed," he said slowly, as if she had confessed to a crime. "We'll need tax returns and business registration before we can proceed." These were requirements she knew weren't in any public policy. She had seen the white woman bypass this very moment without a hitch. "I wasn't aware that was necessary for a simple checking account," Zora said, her voice curious, not combative. "Is this a new policy?" "It's our policy for accounts we consider high risk," Preston replied. His eyes flickered toward the door. "If you'd prefer a more basic banking experience, there's a community credit union about 6 blocks east. It might suit your needs better." The suggestion, to take her business elsewhere, was the velvet-gloved version of "You don't belong here." Aiden busied himself with papers, his silence speaking volumes. Zora thanked them both, turned and walked out. But she wasn't retreating. She had exactly what she came for. The next morning she returned. This time she carried enough documentation to satisfy a mortgage underwriter: tax returns, bank statements, business licenses, everything neatly tabbed in a leather portfolio. She wasn't going to leave a single crack for denial to slip through. The branch was busier, the murmur of transactions echoing off the brass fixtures. Aiden's eyes met hers with faint recognition. Preston was entertaining a white man in a golf shirt, his laughter bouncing through the lobby. Zora bypassed the teller line entirely and went to the receptionist. "I'm here to open a checking and savings account and discuss wealth management. I have an appointment." It was a bluff, but a calculated one. Appointments came with protocol. The receptionist tapped her keyboard, frowned slightly. "I don't see." "That's strange," Zora said gently, flipping open her portfolio so the paperwork caught the light. "I spoke with someone yesterday who assured me I could come this morning. Since I'm already here, perhaps there's someone available?" The receptionist hesitated. No one wanted to contradict a woman who carried herself like she expected yes for an answer. And in that moment, Zora knew the real test was about to begin. The receptionist lifted the phone, her voice a quiet murmur as she checked for available bankers. Zora's gaze drifted past her, catching the figure of a man in the doorway of the corner office. Bryson Walsh, branch manager. He was the kind of leader who could charm a room without ever showing his hand. A man who perfected the art of being present just enough to claim credit, but absent enough to deny responsibility. Behind his easy smile lived decades of knowing exactly when to step in and when to look away. He walked toward them now, his expression polite, his pace measured. "Good morning. I understand there may be some confusion about an appointment." Preston cut in before Zora could answer. "Mr. Walsh, this is the individual I mentioned yesterday. She was advised about our documentation requirements for new accounts." Individual. Not customer. Not client. Just a category, the kind you keep at arm's length. Walsh's smile cooled by a few degrees as if a silent code had passed between them. "I see," he said smoothly. "Well, as Mr. Reed explained, we have certain protocols for new account holders without established banking relationships. Perhaps we should review what you've brought." Zora opened her leather portfolio. One by one, she laid the documents on the desk: driver's license, passport, social security card, birth certificate, utility bills, 3 months of bank statements, tax returns, credit report, business registration. It was the kind of paperwork that could make a mortgage broker weep with gratitude. And yet, Walsh and Preston lingered over each page as if they were searching for a flaw. Finding none, Walsh finally gestured toward a side desk. "Vivian can assist you with the initial paperwork." Vivian Mercer, loan officer. 40 years in banking had given her a professional exterior like polished glass, reflective, smooth, and impossible to read. She began the process with the mechanical precision of someone working through a checklist, her tone clipped but polite. When Zora inquired about wealth management, Vivian's response was quick. "Those services typically require minimum investments of $250,000. We generally recommend our basic savings options for customers at the beginning of their financial journey." The assumption was clear. Zora smiled lightly. "I understand the minimum. My current portfolio exceeds $500,000, mostly in tech stocks and municipal bonds. I'm here to discuss diversification strategies." Vivian blinked just once before recovering her neutral tone. "We would need to verify those assets. The documentation requirements are extensive." "Of course," Zora agreed. Though I noticed the couple at the next desk seems to be discussing investments without having provided such verification. Is there a different procedure for them? Her words landed softly, but they landed. The couple, both white, both dressed in that casual elegance that whispered old money, were laughing with their banker paperwork untouched. Vivian's lips curved into a small diplomatic smile. Each client's situation is unique. And so it went. Requests for more identification, hints at account restrictions, repeated mentions of high minimum balances. Preston hovered like a shadow, pretending to assist other staff, yet circling closer each time Zora asked for clarification. When she finally questioned why employment verification was necessary given her tax returns, Preston stepped in. "Is there a problem here?" he asked Vivian, though his eyes locked on Zora. "Miss Jenkins has questions about our verification requirements," Vivian said smoothly, putting just enough distance between herself and the tension. "Our requirements ensure we serve only qualified clients," Preston said. "If our standard procedures surpass your expectations, perhaps another institution would be more suitable." It was the second time in as many days that he had suggested she take her business elsewhere. Zora's voice remained calm, but she projected it just enough to be heard by the customers at nearby desks. "I'm simply trying to understand which requirements are standard and which are selectively applied." Color rose along Preston's cheekbones. But before he could respond, a white customer approached him with a quick question about deposit limits. And just like that, the irritation vanished from his face, replaced by that warm, obliging smile reserved for the people he thought mattered most. Preston's smile for the white customer was wide, unhurried, almost old friend warm. The moment he turned back to Zora, it was gone, replaced with that clipped, impatient edge she had come to recognize. "We'll need time to process your application and verify your documentation. You'll hear from us in 7 to 10 business days," he said as if reading from a script. 7 to 10 days. For her, a wait measured in weeks. For others, minutes. She had watched it happen with her own eyes. Accounts opened, checks printed, cards activated, all before she could even get a second meeting. Zora's voice was soft, but it carried. "I noticed the gentleman who arrived after me has already completed his account and received his temporary checks. Is there a reason mine would take so much longer?" Preston's jaw tightened. "Each client's situation is unique. We've done everything we can to accommodate your request today. If you'll excuse me, I have other clients to assist." He turned and walked away. Vivian finished the paperwork without meeting Zora's eyes. As Zora stepped outside, she saw faces in the lobby, some embarrassed, some curious, a few simply blank. She pulled a small leather-bound notebook from her bag, jotting down everything she'd seen. She wasn't just building a record, she was constructing a case. The next morning she would stop documenting and start pressing. Thursday came dressed in bright autumn light, the kind that made glass sparkle. Zora arrived at Monarch Financial with a slightly sharper edge to her look. Still modest, still within the bounds of middle-class professionalism, but with a quiet authority in her posture that couldn't be faked. Inside, the reaction was immediate. Heads turned. Conversations lowered. Aiden Fox glanced at her and then away. Vivian buried herself in paperwork. Preston, leaning casually against the loan department counter, straightened at the sight of her. "Good morning," Zora said to the receptionist. "I'd like to speak with someone about business loan options. I'm considering expanding my consulting practice." "Do you have an existing business account with us?" the receptionist asked. "Not yet. I'm still evaluating banking relationships for both personal and business needs." The receptionist's eyes flicked to Preston. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Zora sat where she could see everything. The rhythm of the branch, the easy flow of white customers moving from greeting to consultation, the subtle glances cast her way. She spotted Preston and Bryson Walsh in quiet conversation, their eyes occasionally cutting toward her. 23 minutes passed. 3 white customers were assisted on the spot. Then Vivian Mercer appeared, holding a thin folder like it was a prop she wished she could set down. "We have some standard materials about our business services," she said, standing over Zora rather than sitting with her. Zora opened the folder. Marketing copy. Stock photos. No real terms, no specific products. "I was hoping to discuss options tailored to my business. I have projections and plans I'd like someone to review." Vivian's glance slid to Preston, who was watching as if she were performing for him. "Our business lending specialists are all with clients at the moment. Perhaps you could leave your materials and someone will contact you." Before Zora could reply, the front doors opened. A white man in khakis walked in. Preston was on him instantly. "Mr. Davidson. Here for that expansion loan we discussed? Bryson's ready for you in his office right now." It was perfect, too perfect. "I notice your lending specialists are available for some clients," Zora said, her tone even but loud enough for the surrounding customers to hear. "I'm happy to wait if Mr. Walsh will be free after his meeting." For just a moment, Vivian's polished banker mask cracked. "Oh, we'll check on that," she said quietly, retreating toward the manager's office. And in that moment, Zora knew the fuse had been lit. The marble floor of Monarch Financial seemed to hold the sound, that sharp, ringing slap, letting it ricochet through every corner of the lobby. Conversations died mid-sentence. Pens froze above checks. A few people gasped out loud, but most simply stared. Zora did not flinch. Her hand rose slowly to the warmth blossoming across her cheek, the skin burning but her gaze steady, locked on Preston Reed's face. He stood there, breathing hard, eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of someone who thought he had put her in her place. He had no idea where her place truly was. "I've already called the police," Preston declared, voice swelling with false authority. "We don't serve your kind here." It was the kind of sentence that carried the stale breath of generations. Words Zora's grandmother had heard in banks, in restaurants, in the hushed tones of loan officers who never meant for their refusals to be written down. Through the glass, red and blue lights flared against the marble columns. 2 patrol cars screeched to a stop at the curb. Inside, the crowd shifted, customers pulling out phones, staff glancing from Zora to the door like spectators at a play they couldn't leave. 3 officers entered. The first, a heavy-set white man with skin lined by years on the street, rested one hand near his holster as his eyes went straight to Zora. The second, younger but carrying the same posture, followed close behind. The third, an Asian-American woman, kept a deliberate step back, scanning the room. Preston moved forward like the star witness in his own fabricated trial. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly. This woman has caused a disturbance, became physically threatening when asked to leave. We've had to restrain her from attacking our staff." The lie came effortlessly, smooth, confident, as though truth was simply whatever Preston decided to say. The lead officer nodded, not once looking toward the witnesses who had recorded every second. His hand inched closer to his weapon. "Ma'am, I need you to put your hands where I can see them and step away from the customers." Around them, the bank was silent but for the soft hum of the HVAC and the faint, shaking breaths of those who knew they were watching something dangerous unfold. Zora lifted her hands to shoulder height. "Compliant, yes, but never small." "Officers," she said, her voice clear enough to fill the room without strain, "there has been a misrepresentation of what happened here today. I was physically assaulted by this bank employee after I questioned discriminatory practices." Her eyes swept the lobby, the phones recording, the witnesses staring. And every single one of these people saw it. The leather portfolio clicked open, the sound sharp and final as a gavel. Zora drew out a set of documents, each one marked with embossed seals and signatures that gleamed beneath the lobby's fluorescent lights. "Officers," she said, her voice steady as stone in a river's current, "these papers confirm my identity and my ownership of this institution." A ripple moved through the room, disbelief, shock, dawning comprehension. The lead officer hesitated before taking the documents, scanning the pages slowly, his brow tightening as the words settled in. "Owner. Majority stakeholder. CEO Timberlake Financial Group." Preston Reed's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes darted from the papers to Zora to Bryson Walsh, who now stood frozen as though the ground beneath him had shifted. Desiree, the young executive in Armani, was already giving quiet instructions to the South Asian tech specialist, who tapped rapidly at his tablet. "Security footage from every camera," she murmured, "backed up and mirrored to our cloud. Chain of custody intact." Zora didn't need to raise her voice to command the space. She simply turned to Preston and let silence do the work. "You have spent 3 days telling me I do not belong here," she said softly. "And yet, this bank belongs to me." A murmur swept through the customers still standing with their phones out, filming every second. One older black man near the back straightened, the faintest smile touching his lips, the kind of smile that remembered Montgomery, Selma, Birmingham. Preston took a step back as if Zora's presence itself had weight. His polished confidence had drained away, replaced by the brittle edge of someone realizing their shield had shattered. "Effective immediately," Zora continued, turning toward Walsh without breaking eye contact with Reed. "Mr. Reed is relieved of his duties. He will leave the premises now without access to bank systems or client records. Security, escort him out. The two guards who had earlier stood at Preston's side exchanged a look, and then moved toward him. For a moment, Preston seemed ready to protest. But then he saw the documents again in the officer's hands, saw the executives who had arrived for her, saw the witnesses, and his words withered in his throat. As he was led away, Zora turned to the officers. "I will be filing a full report," she said, "detailing the events of the past 3 days, including video evidence, staff statements, and client testimonies. And I will expect it to be investigated as both an assault and a case of racial discrimination in a place of public accommodation." The lead officer gave a stiff nod, his earlier presumption now visibly unsettled. Zora stood tall in the center of the lobby, the air electric around her. "Let this be clear," she said, her voice resonant, her gaze sweeping staff and customers alike. "This institution will no longer be a place where someone is told, 'You don't belong here.' Not on my watch." And for the first time in 3 days, there was no one in Monarch Financial who dared to look her in the eye and tell her otherwise. Preston's fingers trembled as he held the papers, corporate seals glinting like verdicts under the lobby's cold light. The truth in his hands was undeniable. The woman he had insulted, dismissed, and struck was not just a customer. She was his boss. No, more than that. She was the owner of the very institution he had been so quick to weaponize against her. His voice came out fractured, stripped of all authority. I didn't know. Ma'am, I'm so." But Zora raised a hand. Not to strike, to silence. "Mr. Reed," she said evenly, "you have shown me exactly what I came here to see." Bryson Walsh, master of corporate survival, stepped forward with a politician's smile already forming. "Miss Timberlake, had we known?" She cut him off without raising her tone. "No, Mr. Walsh. This is not a misunderstanding. This is standard practice. What you've done to me these past 3 days is what you do to anyone you think has no power. The only difference is that I do." Her words traveled the length of the marble lobby, sinking into the ears of every onlooker. Conversations died. Even the guards shifted uncomfortably, men who, moments earlier, had been ready to detain her now realizing they'd been following orders to humiliate their employer. Desiree stepped in smoothly, retrieving the acquisition documents from Preston's limp hands and returning them to Zora's leather portfolio. "The executive team is in the conference room. Legal has prepared the emergency orders. HR is standing by." Preston glanced around desperately for an ally. None came. Even Walsh, the man who had shielded him for years, had already begun inching away, the calculation plain on his face. He would try to paint himself as ignorant rather than complicit. Officer Kimura approached Zora with quiet respect. "Miss Timberlake, do you wish to press charges? We have clear evidence and multiple witnesses." The air thickened. Everyone in the lobby could feel the weight of the decision. Zora took her time as she always did when judgment mattered. "No," she said finally. "He will not work here another day, but this is bigger than one man. This is about dismantling a culture that rewarded his behavior." Her words were the sound of a door slamming shut on an old era. Preston was escorted toward the back, his once carefully tailored suit now hanging heavy on his shoulders. Zora turned to the customers and staff, her voice low but carrying, "We are closing for the rest of the day. When we reopen, every client, will receive the respect they deserve regardless of race, background, or perceived status. And every employee will know exactly what is expected of them." She moved toward the executive offices, her team falling in step beside her, the police trailing close behind to finalize the paperwork. There was no gloating in her stride, no trace of vengeance, only the steady, relentless purpose of a woman who had walked into the lion's den and left with its head. Customers began filing out into the autumn afternoon, some already tapping out messages, others holding up phones with videos that would ignite the internet before sundown. Several paused to tell her their own stories, wrongs that had been buried until this moment, now brought into the light for the first time. By the time the sun dipped low, Monarch Financial was no longer simply a bank. It had become a stage, and Zora Timberlake had delivered a performance of justice the city would not soon forget. What began as a quiet, undercover investigation had transformed into something far more explosive, a full-scale reckoning with institutional discrimination, unfolding in plain view. Preston Reed's fall was swift and merciless. The same guards who, hours earlier, had been seconds from detaining Zora at his command, now flanked him as he clutched a cardboard box filled with hastily gathered possessions. His tie hung loose, his once crisp shirt damp at the collar, his face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Just that morning he'd walked this lobby flushed with authority. Now he walked it hollow-eyed, stripped of power, stripped of certainty, stripped of the illusion that his actions carried no consequence. The very cameras that had captured his slap now recorded his shame, creating a symmetry of justice so precise it felt almost scripted. At the glass doors, Preston hesitated. He turned for one last look at the domain he had ruled through intimidation and quiet bias. Then he stepped into the autumn sunlight, and the doors closed behind him with a sound that felt final. Applause broke out. It wasn't a cheer for his downfall, but for what it symbolized, the possibility that a system might at last be held to account. Customers approached Zora, some clasping her hand, some leaning close to whisper their own stories, experiences so familiar they didn't need to be explained. Preston's departure was only the beginning. Vivian Mercer, the lone officer who had applied different rules to different faces for decades, was next. Her box of belongings was smaller, her departure quieter, but no less final. 40 years of service could not shield her from the truth that she had enforced. Then came Bryson Walsh, the branch manager who had perfected the art of enabling discrimination while keeping his own hands clean. His protests began before the guards even reached him. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am? Who I know?" He didn't yet understand that everyone he knew now reported to Zora Timberlake. His 26 years in the bank, years he thought were his shield, were, in truth, the heaviest weight against him. 2.5 decades of shaping policy, training others to perpetuate bias, and presenting a polished face to hide an ugly truth. His voice boomed through the lobby as the doors swallowed him. 26 years. Zora faced the remaining staff. Her tone was calm, unflinching. "This isn't about punishing individuals. It's about dismantling a culture. Every termination today came with clear documentation. Policy violations, ethical breaches, and in some cases, violations of law. These changes will happen in every branch. If you choose to remain, you will work under new standards. Accountability, transparency, and respect for every customer, regardless of appearance, accent, zip code, or account balance." Some nodded in relief, freed from practices they had quietly resented. Others stared at the floor, weighing their place in this new order. Outside, the story was already spreading. The first news van arrived less than 30 minutes after Preston's exit. A local station drawn by shaky, powerful cell phone videos already racing through social media. By the time Bryson Walsh's tirade made it to the sidewalk, cameras were rolling. Evening news teasers were being written in real time. Whether by chance or by design, the timing ensured one thing. This was no quiet internal matter. This was a public reckoning.